China's economy is gradually collapsing. At this rate, no one knows what will happen next, but one thing's certain. This could have serious global repercussions. That's the latest message from geopolitical expert and strategist Peter Zyyhan. China's rapid economic growth has been driven by an overwhelming amount of debt taken to invest in projects and businesses. This has led to the construction of massive industrial plants and developments. However, there's a downside. When credit is too easy to get and seemingly limitless, it can create economic bubbles. One of the clearest examples is China's real estate sector. The Shanghai Academy of Sciences estimates that there are so many unoccupied condos in China that they could house 1.5 to 3 billion people. To put that into perspective, that's more vacant housing than the rest of the world combined, multiplied by 5. This is concerning because about 70% of private savings in China are tied up in real estate. If this bubble bursts, it could lead to widespread financial loss, similar to the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis in the United States. But the problem isn't just in real estate. China's agriculture sector also faces difficulties. Chinese farms use much more fertilizer and pesticides than other countries because their land isn't as fertile. This over-reliance on chemical inputs is unsustainable and could lead to food shortages if the system collapses. If you think these issues are alarming, they're not the only problems China is currently facing. In today's in-depth analysis, geopolitical expert Peter Zyyhan explains why China's economy collapsed and how this could negatively affect countries worldwide. Make sure to stick around to the end of the video where we will thoroughly examine Peter's analysis to determine whether his argument is flawed or valid. Also guys, only a small percentage of my viewers are subscribed. If you enjoy economics, geopolitics, and history, consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Now let's jump in with this analysis with Peter Zyyhan.
India. Same general program as what went down in Australia, with one difference. To qualify for the funds, you had to be a friend of the Prime Minister. And here are the Chinese. Let me bring that down for you. On a good day, the healthiest sector in the Chinese economy looks worse than Enron did the day it collapsed. It's just credit. Endless credit, free credit. Everything that everyone charges American corporatism and the US Fed with is actually true in the case of the Chinese system. Now, this doesn't mean that it's all negative. Of course you get growth when the credit is free and bottomless. You get $35 trillion of industrial plant, but wow, you get some weird stuff. So you guys seen what's going on with the real estate sector in China of late? Remember the Shanghai Academy of Sciences? You know, the wise men? Yeah. They estimate now that there are sufficient never lived in condos in China that if you open them up, you could house 1.5 to 3 billion people. You know, that's more spare housing than the rest of the world combined times 5. It's also 70% of private savings. And that's not even the sector that's most mutated. That would be agriculture. Inputs into the Chinese system for things like fertilizers and pesticides are more than 5 times what we use here per calorie produced. Because their land sucks and they've turned whatever good land they had into cities. So when this goes, and every country who has ever done something like this, it's gone eventually. You not only have a political crisis because the population has lost their savings, you not only have a subprime style collapse in every economic subsector at the same time, you also get famine. No, I do not worry about China overtaking us in anything. I worry about what the collapse looks like. Now, this would normally be where people start having a conversation about how when you have an authoritarian system that doesn't have to respond to petty interest groups or democracy or votes, that can take the long view, the big picture, that they might be able to choose a different path that's more sustainable or at least delay the inevitable. That is totally not what the Chinese have. The Chinese have a cult of personality. Chairman Xi has spent the last 13 years intimidated into silence, executing, imprisoning, or exiling everyone within the entire system who is capable of conscious thought. He first started with the local and the regional governments. He went into the party itself. He spent the last few years going after academia and business, and of course the bureaucracy. And we're now in a situation where he has established himself as the sole decision maker, but he's penalized the transmission of information that could be of use in making decisions. And so the bureaucracy has taken their cue from that. And it's not that they're collecting the data, just not reporting it. They just stopped collecting. Because if the data doesn't exist, then there's not a problem. So some of these are sad but kind of funny. So like when they opened up after COVID, they just stopped collecting death certificates from everywhere. So how many people died? We don't know. We'll never know. The data doesn't exist. Some of these have some very real economic issues. The bond market, no data collection. How do you have a bond market if nobody knows what's on offer or who's bought what? Well, if that information doesn't exist, then the state banks, which are responsible for that financial super build, are the only game in town. Others are a little darker. Youth unemployment, they didn't like the number, they stopped collecting it. They since changed it, but it ignores everyone who is under 25 who is looking for a job. The one I worry about, the two of them, patents. Supposedly this is an information-led system that has overtaken the United States. No. Local political biographies, college dissertations. The CCP has made it impossible for anyone under 40 to get a hook into the system to try to be part of the next generation of leadership, because a new generation of leadership would threaten Xi personally. And so he's just stopped it from ever forming in the first place. He's going to be the last leader of the PRC.
Over the past 13 years, Xi Jinping has established himself as the central figure in Chinese politics by systematically eliminating or silencing potential rivals. This purge has extended across various sectors, including local and regional governments, the Communist Party, academia, business, and the bureaucracy. Xi's approach has involved intimidating or imprisoning anyone capable of independent thought or dissent, creating a political environment where he is the sole decision maker. This concentration of power has led to a situation where alternative voices and future leadership possibilities have been suppressed. Notably, Xi's regime has made it nearly impossible for younger or new leaders to emerge, as the system is structured to prevent them from gaining influence or participating in leadership roles. While it has been effective for him, this centralization and the suppression of potential leaders do not provide a clear path for a new generation of leaders to rise. Consequently, Xi Jinping's continued consolidation of power and the elimination of leadership alternatives point to the possibility that he could be the last leader of the PRC, as the political system he has created may lack the flexibility and adaptability needed for future leadership transitions. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments. Let's get back to Peter Zyyhan as he discusses this further.
A couple of good examples about how horrible this has gotten. You guys remember back in, February of 2021, when the lights went out in Beijing? Nationwide rolling brown and blackouts that lasted over a year. No one told Xi. It wasn't until September that he found out. And you know who told him? Joe Biden. Now, don't get angry at Uncle Joey. He didn't know it was a secret. We could see it from space. It was in USA Today, but no one had told Xi. It just came up on a Zoom call in passing. And can you imagine being that bureaucrat in the back of the room when that popped up? He's like, oh, I just have to be anywhere else. He had established himself as the sole decision maker, but he had penalized information transfer, so he didn't become aware of it until September, and it took 6 months for his plan to get into place to fix the system. And so we're seeing this sort of decision-making breakdown at every stage of the Chinese system, at every level, in every economic sector. There's one decision maker, and one person cannot manage 1 billion plus people, just can't. But the better example I can give you is that stupid balloon. Now, if you guys remember when that thing floated in from Canada, and thanks for that, by the way, Canada, I had the same response as the American president. Clearly, this is a spy platform. Let's shoot it down. I mean, it was 350 feet across. It was dangling something the size of an Embraer jet. You guys know Embraers? The jungle jets, 2 seats on one side, one on the other, Barbie dream jets. They're like cramped and tiny unless they're hanging from a balloon, in which case they have a little heft to them. Clearly, it's a spy platform. Shoot it down. Let's see what we're dealing with. Biden gave that order. But unlike in the Chinese system, the American system, with all its faults, does not penalize information transfer. So somewhere deep in the bowels of the Pentagon, at the end of the hall, up against the physical plant, was that guy with the comb over that no one wants to make eye contact with. He's a balloon hound. He's like, I love balloons. And his report made it up to the top. And so the CIA director and the defense chief had a sit down with the president, like, Mr. President, please don't shoot this thing down. We're not worried about this. It's not a national security threat. We know where it's going to go. It's going to float over the missile silos in Montana. But Mr. President, unless we fell asleep during the last cabinet meeting, it doesn't sound like you're planning on nuking anyone this week, which means the hatches on those silos are going to be closed. So the Chinese will get photos of closed hatches from 7 miles away. Mr. President, this is not a concern. What it is, Mr. President, is an opportunity. Because if you let us do our jobs, we'll put a spy helicopter below this thing and a spy plane above it, and every whisper sensor that we can redirect, we will. And we'll track this sumbitch over the next 9 days. And we'll get copies of all their cryptography. We'll see which satellites they're using to control it. We'll see how they're sending information through our civilian network. And at the end of this, Mr. President, quick reminder, the NSA maintains a stronger hacking capacity, offensive hacking capacity, than the combined governments of the rest of the planet. So we'll be able to tell you not what city or what prefecture or what block or what building or what floor or what office, but what terminal is commanding this thing. And we will hack the tar out of that terminal, and we will tag everyone who comes into contact with it, and we will rip apart their entire SIGINT system from the inside out. Mr. President, this is the intelligence breakthrough of the decade, and they just handed it to us. And so the president said, yeah, do that.
So now, let's break down Peter's analysis and share our thoughts. Peter predicts a potential economic collapse similar to past crises experienced by other countries. This collapse would not only result in a severe political crisis and a loss of savings for the population, but could also lead to widespread famine. His concern is less about China overtaking the US economically, and more about the nature and impact of its potential collapse. Now, could we say that the situation is that severe? Based on the data, China is currently grappling with economic issues stemming from excessive and unregulated credit, leading to a massive overbuild of unoccupied condominiums. This overexpansion in real estate is compounded by serious inefficiencies in agriculture, where the use of fertilizers and pesticides far exceeds that of other countries due to poor land quality. The government's approach under Xi Jinping has further exacerbated these problems. The administration has fostered an environment of poor decision-making by suppressing information and stifling dissent. This is evident in the mishandling of nationwide power outages and the mismanagement of a high-profile spy balloon incident. The need for more accurate data and effective governance creates widespread economic and administrative dysfunction. Peter's analysis presents a valid concern about the potential collapse of the Chinese economy and the political system under Xi Jinping's rule. His prediction is grounded in the Chinese governance model's observable economic imbalances, inefficiencies, and systemic issues. If China's collapse were to happen, it would have profound global implications due to its position as a global economic powerhouse. Since many nations rely on China's industrial output and supply chains, a collapse could disrupt international trade, lead to economic instability, and trigger financial contagion. Additionally, China's large investments and influence in various regions could result in geopolitical shifts and instability, affecting global security and economic relationships. However, as with any prediction, the actual outcome will depend on how these issues evolve and how the Chinese government addresses them in the future. What do you think of these developments? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, And subscribe for more updates and analysis as we track this critical story.